afternoon, everyone. My name is Pam, and today I'm going to talk about an illogical, very illogical road to peace and how we can all be part of the solution. And with that, I would like to start with a little exercise. If I could please invite all of you to stand. Thank you. I know it's been I'm like number 4 or 5, got to like stretch a bit. And I'd like to ask you a simple question. If peace is something which is important to you in whichever shape or form, I would like you to remain standing. Otherwise, can you please take a seat? Okay, really good. I was really afraid that all of you would sit down and then I would have a lot of work cut out for me. So with that, please turn to the person next to you and wish them a happy International Peace Day. And awesome stuff. Okay, thank you so much, and please take a seat. And with that in mind, now that we've established some common ground, thankfully, that peace is something that's important to all of us. And peace is something which is quite amorphous in that sense. It's something which is very wide. It has many meanings. There's something that's called like inner peace. You know, we can have inner peace. And there's something very much more on a macro level. Peace can be described when states who are entering into conflict and war have a ceasefire. But the peace that I would like to talk about today is something that is very much all-encompassing, something that's very relevant, and something that resonates within ourselves and between one another, which is what that enables each of us to flourish, what enables the human condition to flourish, what is it that creates and enables justice, what is it that restores, and what is it that enables freedom. And there are certain things that get in the way of all this. In the world today, there are actually 12 ongoing conflicts that result in more than 1,000 deaths a year. And with that, I mean, there have been countless numbers of conflicts since the beginning of time, more than we can imagine. And usually the effects of these wars, they often have leftovers. What happens is that war remnants, such as artillery shells, landmines, are left in the country, and they are really indiscriminate weaponry, something which commonplace civilians, innocent people get affected years after the conflict has ended. So if you look at the world today, the areas which are shaded in yellow to red are areas in the world, countries which are still affected by landmines. And another effect of all these conflicts that happens in these countries is that it often results in poverty. And poverty in itself is something which is something that we hear a lot about. It's something which is another huge thing that gets in the way of justice. It's a huge thing that gets in the way of people being able to live lives in abundance. 26.5% of our world lives in poverty today. That amounts to 1,215 million people, which is like staggering. It is insane. And when we hear about all these things that get in the way, it often feels and sounds like something very much far removed, something that we can't really look at it and we're like, what can we do? You know, it's there. And so with that, I would like to introduce the illogical road to peace in the face of all these huge, really crazy problems. And I'd like to propose that there are 2 ways which you can do this. The first way is looking at identity, and the second way is to look deeply into community. I'd like to just touch a bit about my personal journey and my first steps into exploring this region. When I was 18, that was my first trip to Cambodia. I cannot explain why I had a heart for Cambodia, or why is it I felt like I had to go, but I went anyway. I went with my church, and we did a little mission trip in the kindergarten. And so when you're 18, for those of us who are from Singapore, it's the time when you start applying for universities. And so I was like figuring out, oh man, like, what am I going to do? And I looked deep and I thought, okay, I wanted to do something that enabled social change. And so I thought, you know what? Injustice, justice, it must be law school. So I applied to law school, I got in, and midway through law school, I was still trying to figure out, you know, in the midst of contract law and tort and like, how does this really tie into where my heart was? So in the middle of law school, I took another trip to Cambodia. And I worked with some minority groups that was persecuted during the Khmer Rouge. So I'm not sure how many of you have been to Cambodia personally, by a show of hands? Awesome stuff, okay. So for those of you who are not familiar with Cambodia, it had been through a genocide between 1975 to 1979, where approximately almost like a third of the population was killed by starvation, torture, mass killings, real evil things. And when I had spent some time there talking to victims, and it was when it started, I really started trying to figure out why is it that this had to happen? How can something so evil happen in our day and age? How did it manage to last for so long? Why is it that a daughter had to see their mother and father being killed in front of their eyes? Why is it that people had to be driven away from their homes? And most importantly, I was trying to figure out, why did I care, and what can I do? And so this was all in the midst of law school, and also trying to figure out whether or not, should I become a lawyer? What is it that my work would entail? A few years later, while I was still in law school, we just happened to have a casual conversation amongst friends, and the topic of Cambodia came up again. And we thought, what if we could create a product that could really capture Cambodia's story and narrative? And we looked at the identity of Cambodia. We looked at her history, and we looked at how we saw what was happening at that point in Cambodia now. We saw that it was a country that experienced a lot of hurt. We saw it as a country which had so much potential now because there was so much hope. There was so much development work that was going there. There were so many people who believed in her. And so we found that after the Khmer Rouge ended in 1979, there was an estimated 4 to 6 million pieces of war fragments left in the country. This meant like bullet casings, artillery shells, bomb shells, landmines from all sorts of shapes and forms. So this is an example of just a fragment of what was found in Cambodia. And we looked at the identity of this metal, and we thought this was something that is intended for destruction. This is something which is made to destroy, is made to kill. But what if we could change its identity? What if we could change it and rebrand it and completely subvert it switch it up on its head? And we thought, what if we could melt it down? What if we could melt it down and turn it into something that instead could create peace? So we started talking to some demining organizations, and we found that there was this great effort to create peace within Cambodia, and it was all tied into this metal. We found that there were demining groups, munition cutting groups that were people who were putting their lives on the line to create a mine-free Cambodia, a country where people would not be afraid to step out of their homes into their farmlands. And we discovered that what was happening was that with every bombshell that was recovered, that they were all cut up, the TNT was extracted, and there was this ability to transform this metal into something that was destructive, into something that could instead create flourishing. They could create income, that could try to meet these crazy problems of poverty, that could create income for the artisans. And we started to approach different community groups in Singapore as well to get them involved, designers, to see how their skills could become very much intertwined with their work in Cambodia. So this is an example of what you can do when you relook at something and look at it beyond what it was intended for. This is actually made from the first one, from a metal, from what you've seen in the first picture, the artillery shells. This is a piece of jewelry that embodies what we commonly know, symbols of peace, the dove, and the humble wheat as a symbol of abundance. So this is what can happen if you look at a material, you look at a person beyond what they're branded as, what they're commonly identified as, and look at it beyond that, what it is. What I think would be really cool, and what I really would wish for one day, is to see these countries in the world plagued by landmines and artillery shells, to one day see all these areas that are all peppered and categorized by destruction, parts of Asia, parts of Russia, Africa, and one day to see all of it change to become countries that are actually instead identified by peaceful means. And so this leads me to the second point, to how I think that there can be an illogical way to peace. The first one was identity. The second one is through community. And this can be done by a collective action. And then this happens when the collective effort affirms and believes in what the action is. To share a little bit of how we started, when we first got this idea of actually turning metal, this war remnant material, into something productive, we went to Cambodia with the idea that it wouldn't work. Because somebody told us that when they find these landmines, they blow it up, and there's nothing left. Maybe just like a little piece, and which you can't do anything with it. So we already booked our ticket, so we thought, we'll just go. So we went, and when we were there, we thought, since we're already here, we might as well make some calls. So we called the Cambodian Mine Action Center, which is like the largest NGO that does clearance work there. We called them up and we said, hi, we're a bunch of students, and we were just interested to find out about the landmine situation in Cambodia. And they said, yeah, sure, come down today at 3 p.m. And we were like, okay. So we went down to the office, and it just so happened that the Secretary General was there, and he invited us into his office, this really nice conference room with gorgeous wood table, and he switched on the PowerPoint, and it was a presentation that was meant for some delegates from Japan, and we were just, at the time, 3 to 4 of us, just friends, and 2 of us, we were interested in this idea. 2 of us were just some of our friends who came on a holiday, and we just went in with our cameras strapped around our heads, and we just sat there, and we were just trying to pinch ourselves each time, and we were wondering, how is this even happening? And which is why I was trying to use this to illustrate the power of what happens when you assemble your cabinet. People who believe in you, people who endorse your action. And what happens when you take that first step and you make that first action? And and then it all started happening. And what if we hadn't been there at the same time? What if there weren't 2 or 3 of us at that time? And what if we didn't make that call? And what if we weren't there and the Secretary General of the Cambodian Mine Action Center didn't say, come on in. And he didn't say, yeah, you know what? I think that's a great idea. I think that we can really create something wonderful with this material. We can create something that can really bless Cambodia, can really tell Cambodia's story. And so what I really hope is that I would like to end with this quote, which I feel is really, really beautiful. It says that darkness cannot drive out darkness, and only light can. The hate cannot drive out hate, but only love can. And that what I really hope today, my challenge to you today, is that not only do you assemble your cabinet of people who start propelling action towards something that matters to you, something that can create change, but the most important question is, where are you going to bring your light to? So thank you very much for your time.